So good evening. Welcome to Managing Anxiety, Fear, and Stress. Very exciting, upbeat topic. Yes, absolutely. Doesn't get better than that. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Morty Levine. I think I know everyone so far. Elizabeth, I have not met you, but welcome. I am the president of Jigma Lingpa Center, a nonprofit Buddhist center in San Diego led by Lama Lanang. Just a very brief background about me before we begin, while people are still joining us. I started to meditate in 1979 when I started to practice the martial arts in graduate school. And there was no instruction given. It was a very traditional Japanese style. Everyone sat on their knees before and after class. They closed their eyes, and there was some Japanese command before and after, and that was it. So, we're not going to be sitting on our knees tonight. That's the good news. The word mindfulness didn't exist at that time. And then in the 80s, I had a Buddhist teacher who required that we meditate 3 hours a day for many years. We're not going to do that tonight either. And eventually, after many years, I started to teach meditation. And I released a meditation series a long time ago called Meditation Pro, which is still out and around, which has been now used by over 750, 800,000 people around the world. So I'm proud of that. In addition to martial arts, I'm a rock climber for many years. And the reason I mention that is because that combination of the martial arts and rock climbing really taught me quite a bit about fear and anxiety, which in Buddhism is known as suffering. And I can assure you that I am still a student of fear and anxiety. And if you want to know more about my background, you can go to, there's a website, tells you a little bit about me, mortylevine.com. You can read all about it. Very exciting. And if you have a question, you can type it out in the chat box. And let me make sure I can see the chat box and all that stuff works. In case you do have questions, yes, I can. Great. So feel free to chat the chat box, interrupt me, not a problem, or turn your microphone on. And that's fine too, no problem. So there's a lot of meditation out there. Religious meditation, mindfulness, websites, apps, which is great, but in my opinion, not a lot of the connecting of the dots between meditation and tools on how to handle one's life while you're not meditating the other 23 plus hours in the day. So it's almost assumed or an afterthought on how it's going to impact the rest of your life. So, you're done meditating, and before you know it, an hour or two later, and you're aggravated and stressed about something, whether you're in traffic or at work or family or whatever. So how are you supposed to improve your life? This is something that I thought about, and actually had a nice conversation. For those of you that know Lama Lanang, had a conversation with him about it. I said, how are supposed to, people improve their lives and overcome 20, 30, 40 years of conditioning and habit with 15 or 20 minutes of meditation a day, once or twice a day? And he said, not going to happen. So he agreed with me, which is always nice. So this is kind of, this class is kind of to help fill in that gap. So, so that's the introduction. And I like to start with a picture of someone climbing. It's one of my favorite climbers. This guy is climbing several thousands of feet off of the ground without a rope. So is he feeling fear, anxiety? Would you feel fear? Some people feel fear and their hearts speed up just by looking at the picture. So, which is an interesting phenomenon in and of itself. Is there anyone here, feel free to raise your hand or chat, that just right at this moment, just looking at this guy, just kind of like, just your heart, a little bit stressful, a little bit anxious. So what's interesting about that phenomenon, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, is there's a concept that's taught by a great Buddhist master called real but not true. Real, that's one of my favorite phrases, real but not true. Real meaning, yes, you are absolutely feeling what you're feeling. That's true, that's real, but it's not true because you're not at risk. Real but not true. So real, yes, what you're feeling is true, is valid, but it's not true in the sense that you're really not at risk. So is the fear he is feeling necessary? Is it helpful? Is it appropriate? What did he do in his mind and his body to get there? And I'll tell you, he got there through years and years of climbing and training that specific route up the mountain, using ropes and safety devices over and over and over again. So by the time he did it without ropes, he was in a very meditative state of mind, no fear. It's a great example of we are what we practice. I love that. An example of how to retrain your mind. I love that. And of course, what seems impossible is very possible. And if we stop the class right now, those three things to me are of greatest value. We are what we practice. You can retrain your mind. And what seems impossible is very possible. So stress. So we're going to talk about it. Might as well define it. And when I use the word stress for the next hour, hour and a half or so, it refers to any of these states of mind: anger, hatred, jealousy. Just reading them out loud, I could feel the energy brings me down. But the more we understand it, then we can deal with it. If we don't really understand it, then it's going to be very hard. If you don't know what the sickness is, you don't know what medicine to take. So what is really underlying stress? Fear, and from a Buddhist perspective, different from psychology, somewhat different, fear and ignorance. Fear impacts how we think and how we behave. It controls us. It reduces our intimacy. It enters into our decision making. It impacts our energy level. And I can go on and on and on when you feel fear. So what triggers fear or anxiety? This is a two-way conversation. Love to hear from you. Feel free to chat in the chat box. What for you, or I'll share with you what triggers it, what used to trigger it for me quite a while ago, and everyone's different. Feel free to chime in. I remember feeling anxious before I would go to karate class, before I would go rock climbing. I remember even a long time ago, 35, 40 years ago, when I would get the US mail, I would feel anxious because there were bills in there and I didn't have any money. Sunday nights would trigger anxiety and fear for me. And everyone's different. Everyone's different. So it's good to know what your triggers are. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So we have external triggers. Examples of external triggers are reading the news. I remember for me, years ago, reading the news when our former president came into office, that triggered anxiety for me. Politics, things like that. People can trigger it. Work environment, external triggers. Well, we also have internal triggers. How about just a thought? Just a little tiny thought. One silly, seemingly random thought can be a trigger to an undesirable state of mind. It could be a thought about something 20 years ago. It could be a thought about something that might happen in the future, hasn't happened yet. Could be a thought about a family interaction. Just a thought can trigger an undesirable state of mind. It's really quite shocking when you look at it that way. What I think might happen in the future can be stressful, or reliving the past. So we all seek a sense of certainty, permanence, assurance. If what we have now we like, we want to keep it that way, and vice versa. We like our preferences, and we don't like when our preferences or expectations aren't met, or we don't think they'll be met in the future. And this applies to small things as well. You run out of milk when you're pouring your cereal in the morning because someone else had that last bit of milk. You can be annoyed, or you feel you're not being treated with respect. You think respect that you think you deserve by those around you. Also, you can get annoyed, irritated, and of course, it applies to bigger experiences as well. Like, will I be able to keep my job? Can I pay my bills? Will I be happy? Will my family be healthy? So those are bigger things than just a seemingly random issue of whether you have your milk or not. And And in life, we have lots of opportunity for expectations and lots of opportunity for expectations not to be met. Every situation we can imagine in this world is up for changing any time. The people who died in 9/11 or during the coronavirus pandemic never thought, of course, in a million years they would die then or in that way. For most of us, we assume and we hope that how we live now, if we like it, will continue. And if we don't like our current situation, then we hope or expect it will change for the better. We know that everything's up for grabs. Life and all that's in it is subject to change. And when expectations are not met and we're attached to those expectations, or we cling or grasp at them or rely on them, then we get triggered. And when we get triggered, we feel fear. Thank you very much. We feel fear, anxiety, irritation, all of those undesirable states of mind. And since life is filled with uncertainty, we're set up for a vicious cycle. Situations or thoughts occur, we get triggered to feel anxious, it becomes a habit. And my favorite example of a habit is in some countries when they raise elephants domestically, if you take a baby elephant when it's growing up and you tie a thick rope around its neck and tie it to a tree, it learns quickly where it can and cannot go. And as it grows up, it doesn't need the thick rope anymore. You can put a little tiny thin piece of dental floss and the elephant will not leave the area around the tree. It has been easily habituated when it was younger to stay where it is. And in this analogy, we are the elephant. And if the elephant is trained well, then you don't even need dental floss to stay within the certain bounds. The habit is strong enough. The risk of fear, anxiety is too strong. So it's a good image to have in your mind when trying to break a habit. So what are our options? Well, option one is just do everything we can to keep our situation stable or the status quo. You know, something changes, something goes wrong, there's a hole in the dam, run and plug it up quickly. You lose a job, quickly get another one. Out of a relationship, quickly get into another relationship. Your finances change, oh, let me go scramble back up that financial mountain. Your health is at risk, fix it quickly. And sometimes we succeed and we get our lives back to normal or back to the way they were for a while. The more we are attached or the more we cling to keeping our situation the same or fixing it, the more fear, panic, and anxiety we will experience until it is fixed or not. I'll say it again. The more we're attached, the more we cling to keeping our situation the same or fixing it, the more fear, panic, or anxiety we'll experience, whether it's fixed or not. So we're going to feel that stress or anxiety feeling until we fix the problem or it goes away. And sometimes we can't fix the situation to the way it was before. And sometimes there were never any holes in the dam at all. We just thought that there were holes there. It can be very uncomfortable in these states of uncertainty as we search around to solve whatever problem has jumped out at us. The problem with this option is if everything is always subject to change, then for the rest of our lives, we are in a never-ending cycle of something takes place, we get triggered, stress, search for a fix. Something takes place, we get triggered, anxiety, search for a fix. We have become in that cycle with this particular option. And I'm not suggesting that if you lose your job, just sit back and kick back and don't look for another one. Of course, so issues arise, we deal with them. What I'm suggesting is that our operating system of being strongly attached to an outcome and then experiencing anxiety and fear until it happens or is resolved or not is not a viable, long-term, healthy, or happy approach. And while we run around trying to fix these issues, what do we do to help us feel better? Well, sometimes nothing. Sometimes we ignore the problem. Sometimes we blame others. Sometimes we take a pill. We get angry. We complain. We use alcohol or drugs. Sometimes we have healthier responses. We go exercise. We meditate, have therapy, but you can't go running at 2 in the morning. I mean, I guess you can when you wake up with your heart racing, and not everyone can run or swim or exercise. Can't Most places you can't meditate at work or every time something happens. Therapy can help, depends on the therapist. Medication can help, of course, depends on the medication. So option one is experience the stress until it's fixed, and it may or may not be fixed. Let's talk about option two. And you can tell by the color green that it is the preferred option. So option two is learn to experience the change that was thrust upon us without the stressful reaction. More like, I was just laid off or my insurance was canceled. What's going on now is very important. I need to address it and pay attention, but I'm going to look for a solution without the baggage of anxiety and fear. And I may not be able to fix it exactly the way I would like to. That's okay. I'll be open and curious and flexible to find a solution without being angry, fearful, or stressed. Possible? That's what we're going to look into. So, short recap. Life is uncertain. Only thing you can do is control your state of mind. It's the only thing you can control in your life is your state of mind. Everything else that you think you can control is an illusion. Meditating 15, 20 minutes a day, if you do it, it's helpful for sure. But it's probably not enough to help us deal with daily stressors. Stress comes to us when things around us change or thoughts trigger us to feel stress and anxiety. And when we are attached or we are grasping to keep our lives a certain way, when change hits us or potential change, we can feel a lot of stress, anxiety, and fear. Or we can retrain ourselves to not be sucked into a vicious cycle. Triggered habitual stress doesn't go away so easily. We don't have the tools to handle it. The more it grips you, the more it's likely to grip you next time as well. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is a vicious cycle. It's time to break it. This class is about reviewing the tools that we can use and practice them and understand why they work. Sometimes they work right away, but more likely they are effective over time. And then they are yours, and then you are in control of how you feel. And frankly, it's nothing more than miraculous, in my opinion. So that's the introduction. And now we're going to do a 2-minute, yes, for all you intense meditators out here, we're going to do a 2-minute exercise of meditation. That's it. That's all we got is 2 minutes. And I'll explain why in a little bit. So I think most of us know how to meditate. And if not, I'll just give you very brief introductions because we only have 2 minutes. So we're going to sit nice and tall. We're going to be relaxed. We're going to close our eyes. Don't worry about anything about your posture, crossing your legs or not. It's okay, no problem. So once your eyes are closed, then you're just going to breathe, natural breathing, however you've been breathing. And I'm going to stop talking in about 20 seconds. But in the meantime, just going to observe your breath in and out. And if a thought pops into your mind, no problem. Just observe the thought and then go back to observing your natural breathing. Your inhale, your exhale, the rising of your abdomen, the air coming in and out of your nose, whatever you want. Thoughts come in and out, and you recognize there's thoughts, no problem. Just go back to observing your breath. So in about 1.5, 2 minutes, I'll start to talk again. For now, just enjoy a very brief meditation. Okay, very slowly, just open your eyes, come back awake again. So we're going to do more of these short meditations, I think another one or two, and I'll explain why later in the presentation. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the science behind fear and anxiety. It's something that every human being, and for that matter, every living being experiences. It can be very uncomfortable. It can last moments or a whole lifetime. And as I mentioned earlier, it can impact every aspect of our life. When you have fear, it impacts your relationships, your decision-making, your habits, your physical, your body, your psychology, everything gets impacted. Our sleep, our interactions with others, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about others, our diet, our mental and physical health, and the list goes on, and it impacts our loved ones, our friends, our colleagues as well. And it's not just on our mental health, there's a direct effect, short-term and long-term, on our physical health as well. So the quick science of it is our mind gets triggered by something, and based upon our habitual response, our genetics and our upbringing, we create a stressful event for ourselves. So briefly, adrenaline comes into play. That's what gets your heart going, elevates your blood pressure, boosts energy supplies. Because thousands or millions of years ago, that's what you needed to run away from the lion. Cortisol, stress hormone, increases glucose in the bloodstream, enhances your brain's use of sugar, and increases the availability of substances to repair tissues. And it also curbs functions that are non-essential or detrimental in a fight or flight situation. So it impacts your immune system responses. It suppresses your digestive system, your reproductive system, and growth processes. So when the lion is chasing the giraffe or the lamb in the wild, or the goat, adrenaline kicks in for the giraffe, cortisol kicks in, and when the giraffe is being chased, all those other systems shut down. They're not necessary. All energy and focus goes towards survival. They don't need the reproductive system or the digestive system turned on when they're running away from the lion. The natural stress response goes to 1,000. So what happens when the giraffe lives? This is the interesting part. Well, systems come back to normal pretty quickly, within minutes. So once a real or a perceived threat is over, the hormones normalize in the giraffe. As adrenaline and cortisol come back to normal, the heart rate, the blood pressure, the immune system, all the other systems resume their regular activities for the giraffe. What happens to humans when we're triggered by a breakup, a divorce, a thought that stresses us? You find out you lose your job. Well, same thing. Initially, the cortisol and the adrenaline go up and various systems shut down. What's the difference between us and the giraffe? Well, the perceived threat for us does not pass quickly. It might take a while to get a new job, so we stay stressed. Or we're triggered by some other thought on how we should have handled the relationship or the job better, so we get stressed again. Or we perceive there is some other surprise lurking for us around the corner, so we get stressed. Well, if I lost my job, then maybe that's going to happen, and maybe that's so. And if you constantly feel under attack, that fight or flight reaction stays turned on. Well, what does this do to our health? Well, when we have a consistent and a persistent activation of this kind of stress response and overexposure to cortisol and other stress hormones, it gives us health problems. So you're at increased risk of anxiety, depression, digestive problems, headaches, heart disease, sleep problems. It's a long list. What's just as interesting to me is at the bottom, then a small print there, 75 to 90% of all doctors' office visits are for stress-related ailments and complaints. It's all tied together. It's all tied together. So, well, what's the time span of an emotion? Fear, anxiety, it's an emotion. So this neuroscientist, Jill Bolte Taylor, says the natural lifespan of an emotion in the body and brain is 90 seconds. I remember reading that, thinking, that's pretty cool. And I said, well, that's not what I experience. All the physical reactions we feel, adrenaline, heat in the face, tightness in the throat, rapid heartbeat, they arise and they peak and they dissipate on their own, can start and finish within 90 seconds. Well, I guess my question for you was, went too far. How often do you experience an emotion for only 90 seconds and then go about your life? Anyone? Rare. So, but I will be honest that it's happening more often for me now than it did 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, where something clicks and then I apply one of the tools that I've used for many, many, many times and many, many years. And lo and behold, a minute or 2 minutes later, and I am back to baseline. So another miracle. So why do these emotions and undesirable states of mind hang around? That is a question for you folks that are online. Why do they hang around? So Cynthia says, don't know the time the emotion lasts, but it stays in my mind for longer. Agreed. Why? Why does it stay in your mind for longer? Why can't we just, okay, I feel stress. Let me take out my watch, count 90 seconds, and it'll be gone. I mean, that's what the neuroscientist says. I'm not going to argue with the neuroscientist. So why does it hang around? Why doesn't it just leave? Anyone? Anyone want to guess? Guessing is allowed. You actually get points for guessing. So Cynthia gets 3 points. Everyone else has 0. Anyone want to guess? Because we have learned that's the way to experience emotions. Exactly. Right on. We tell ourselves, so you get 10 points, Myra. So we tell ourselves these stories. And those stories, exactly, we learned that way, Laura. Thank you. We tell ourselves stories that support our identity, our ego, who we think we are. And those stories keep us in the stress zone. It's our habitual way of dealing with the trigger. These stories prop us up. We want to justify who we are, who we think we are, and what we're feeling. In a nutshell, that's why they stay around. We habitualized ourselves. So the shoulda, woulda, coulda. So it'll keep us in the stress zone. The ego, our identity, wants to strengthen itself through being right and making someone else or situation wrong. These stories, they prop us up. So they should have fired her. Why'd they fire me? I can't believe my son, daughter talked to me that way. Well, next time that happens, I'm going to da-da-da. Or I should have done it this way. I wish it. Those are the kinds of stories that we tell ourselves probably thousands of times a day. So why don't we just stop doing that after 90 seconds and just go and be happy? If we knew the answer to that, we could stop the class right here. So the answer is we are wired to keep our identity intact, telling ourselves these stories about why we are right. Keeps the identity intact and keeps emotions alive. The more we repeat the stories to ourselves, the harder it is to stop doing it. The odds are against us. To make things even worse, psychologist Rick Hansen, the mind is like Velcro for negative experiences. He holds on to them, and Teflon for positive experiences. We tend to focus on and absorb and hold on to negative experiences, probably related to our evolution, where someone in my family was eaten by a lion 10,000, 100,000 years ago, whenever. And that's going to hold in my mind a lot more, a lot longer than, oh, I found some wonderful blueberries today. So growing up as a child, these stories are how we dealt with triggers and helped us to survive. And when we're used to feeling a certain way, you're likely to continue to feel that way. The nerve pathways that correspond to anger get stronger. So it becomes easier for these emotions and the stories associated with them to hang around. So recap, physical chemical responses are unhealthy when stress stays on. Triggers and what we do with them are habituated. It's a thought process that takes over. It is biased towards the negative and it strengthens itself every single time we experience it. Where did we learn this from? Family, culture, genetics, previous lifetimes, if you believe in rebirth, friends, environment. Just like the elephant and the rope. Can't change his understanding of the world. It's habituated. 15 minutes a day of meditation, great. Not enough in today's world. Okay, next one is going to be a 1-minute meditation. So you can relax your body, sit up tall, close your eyes. You all know what to do. Just observe your breath, any part of the breath you want. And if thought comes in and out of your mind, not a problem. Just go back to observing your breath, 1 minute. Enjoy. Okay. Slowly open your eyes. Come back in. So why do we do these, I call them snap meditations? Because it helps to train our mind to change quickly, which will translate to choosing to lose your anger or your stress or your emotion and stop telling the story quickly. We'll see, we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation on how to do it. But when you can do that, that's how you can cut that get back to that 90 seconds. Not so much by meditating, but by using some of these tools on a consistent basis. So I like this quote here. I don't remember where I got it from, but I like it. It's when you're sick and tired of whatever habit you've got and you go, I don't need that. I've had enough of that in my life. So we're going to go through a set of techniques, practices, teachings that are geared to break this habit. And many of these have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So there's a good track record. And the goal is to give you tools that you can pull out anytime you need them and apply them. Any tool, one tool by itself is great, but if you have a lot of tools, you can do anything. And if we train ourselves for the tools to work naturally, then we can break the habit, reduce stress, anger, and fear. So before you judge any one tool, wait until you see the whole toolbox. And then eventually with some practice, you'll have 2 or 3 favorites that you will use all the time. But good to know what antidotes are available to you. And practice them a lot, even on the small stuff, especially on the small stuff. The tendency when you're angry or stressed on the big stuff is to go back and repeat what we've been doing. We need to break that habit. It's only done with practice. So the good news is this concept of neuroplasticity. Our brains have the ability to learn new processes. Our neural networks are not hardwired. You can teach an old dog new tricks. This concept really came alive when the Dalai Lama started collaborating with scientists in the United States to study the brain. And when monks came here and they wired them up to, CAT scans and MRIs, that's when it really was confirmed that our brains are not hardwired. You can teach an old dog new tricks. And this is my warning. When we practice these, or you practice these on your own, start in simple situations. If you start to do it the moment you have a big upheaval in your life, it could be very difficult. So when you go lift weights at the gym, you lift the pink and the light pink and the light blue ones first, the 5 and 10 pounders, before you lift 100 pounds. So we want to really set ourselves up for success. Okay, so breathing and body connection. That's a very creative name I came up with for this first technique. When you notice you are triggered, here are the directions. Meaning you notice you're stressed, you notice you're anxious, and sometimes you may not notice it right away. Sometimes you just walk around pissed off or angry, and it takes you a while to realize, oh, that's how I feel. So the first thing we're going to do is observe that feeling of anger. Find the spot in your body that is tight, tense, observe it, and stay with it, and breathe into and out of the area where you feel the stress. For me, it's not always the same place, but more often than not, for me, it's in my abdomen or my head. Some people feel it in their neck. Some people feel it in their chest, right? So, step one is observe that slow breathing in and out of one area of the physical stress. Stay with it. Be curious about that sensation. Thoughts are going to come into your mind about how to solve the situation. No problem. Go back to observation mode. No judgments. Simply observe the feeling. Find where it is in your body. Observe it. Stay with it while breathing slowly or naturally, either way, into and out of the area where you feel the stress. Eyes can be open or closed. Doesn't matter. Sounds simple? It can be. So we're going to practice that now very briefly. So find something that happened today that mildly annoyed you or irritated you. And if there's nothing that happened today that mildly annoyed or irritated you, that's okay too. Even though you may not have stress now, there is natural stress in our body all the time. So let's find a spot. The neck area usually works. And just for 10, 20 seconds, close your eyes. You can leave them open if you want. And you're just going to breathe and observe. Breathe in and out of that neck area, or just pay attention to that neck area while you're breathing. So observing that neck area as you're breathing in and out of it, or any other area where you feel stress. And I'll stop speaking for 10 or 20 seconds. Okay. You can open your eyes up. Simple enough. Simple enough. So breathe in and out of the spot. Nice, long, slow breathing. Be curious about it. And you do this for 45, 60 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. That's fine. That's the whole technique. You guys signed up, paid thousands of dollars for this class, and that's the first technique I give you. Is that crazy? So any thoughts or comments or feedback on that seemingly simple technique? Anyone notice anything? Anything happen, not happen? Open your eyes and there was the winning lottery ticket right in front of you. What?
Can I speak out loud, or you
Of course, absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I was writing down like different areas where I normally get, either the chest, the stomach, my jaw, or my lower stomach. But something in particular today, I would say probably in my chest area. It just kind of went up and down throughout the day. But other than that, yeah, it's actually good to become aware of it, because I don't think I've actually done this exercise before. So that was very helpful.
Great. So at that, now that's wonderful feedback. So at a minimal level, you became aware of where you felt the physical stress.
Right.
In my mind, that is a huge, huge success. Now, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say, that's great, but how is your stress level? Did it decrease? Did it increase? That's not the game. That's not the goal here. Not at this stage of the game. Right now, we're just becoming aware of the physical sensation of wherever we feel it. Now, one thing you may notice, and feel free anyone else to interrupt me or chat in the chat box, that one thing you may notice is whatever you're observing may change or shift in some way or another. I didn't say improve. Probably will, but that's not what I'm going for now. Not going for improvement, not yet, not for a long time. Right now, we're just following the steps to success. So, and if you do this for more than 30 seconds or 45 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, then you'll absolutely 100% notice a change or a shift in how you feel and what you're observing. So, and what eventually happens is you do the stress, the physical stress releases, because all it is physical stress. And even me, I'm not really stressed out now, but when I close my eyes, there's some natural stress here, and then I can feel my whole body release. So we do this technique because it breaks the habitual reaction. What's our habitual reaction? The stories, the stress, the trigger impacting us. It breaks that. How does it break it? How does it break it? Because we're not doing that. If I'm observing this, then I'm not doing that. Breaks the reaction, stops the stories, brings the body and the mind into the present moment together, teaches the body that it is okay, that the body can calm itself, even if it's only for a short period of time. You get some degree of control, that you won't be stressed forever. It calms the mind when the body is calm, and it calms the body when the mind is calm. It allows for clarity of reality so you can better deal with the situation that requires attention. Clarity of reality so you can assess if it's a conflict that you need to worry about or not. Is it a snake or is it a rope? When you're clear, you can see that. When you're not clear and you wake up in the morning and immediately you start telling yourself, oh my God, this has to happen today. You don't know what's real or what's a snake or a rope. You're just like, ah. So this little tiny technique, guess what? Breaks the habitual reaction of being stressed and triggered, stops the stories, brings the body and mind into the present moment, teaches the body it's okay, that the body can calm itself, even if only for a short period of time. You get to realize you do have control over how you feel. Does it get you a new job? That's not the goal. Eventually, yeah, you got to get the job, you got to get your insurance, you got to get the money, whatever it is, but better to do it without all the stress and with greater clarity. So a simple technique, look at all the potential benefits. Does it work right away? Sometimes, yeah. How long will it take until you feel better? Don't know. That depends on a lot of things. Important thing is that you're moving in the right direction, even if it's only half an inch at a time. I'll share a personal story with you, which I shared the last time I taught this class, and I'm happy to share it. So I've been doing this for a long time, as I mentioned at the beginning of class, 40 years, I'm teaching these techniques quite a bit. And I meditate every day, sometimes twice a day, many years, still a beginner. And in March, when the pandemic kicked in, our business had to shut down. I remember waking up at 2 in the morning, and my heart was pounding wildly. And we had laid off everyone that worked for us. Uncertainty was everywhere. And I remember saying to myself, lying in bed, I know what to do. I said, and I did this technique. There's another 8 or 10 coming, and I just went to the simplest one. And I remember after 3 minutes seeing that my body felt calmer, but but I was still stressed. And I said, and I remember thinking, I said, Morty, 3 minutes? What are you kidding me? You think this is going to go away in 3 minutes? And I kept doing it. I remember about 20, because I looked at my watch at 20 minutes later, 22 minutes later, I was back to normal, totally normal, from a full-blown, we'll call it a panic attack, whatever you want. And I'll be honest with you, I was happy as can be once I said, oh, this stuff really works, even the big stuff. I mean, I'd used it, like I said, many times before, but primarily, the minor to medium things. And here it was just full-blown misery. The problem was still there. Company was still shut down. We laid off all the people. I was not stressed about it. And then when I went, and I could go back to sleep and wake up the next morning and then do what needed to be done to reopen the company, which we did, and get back on track, which we did. Breaks the habitual reaction, teaches the body it's okay. The body can heal itself. You're not going to be stressed forever. Calms the mind when the body calms. Okay, time for commercial. This is my meditation commercial. These techniques rely on a meditation practice. So doing these techniques in the comfort of your home, easy. Doing it when you're really stressed or angry, not so easy. But when you meditate daily, you have some ability to focus your mind where you want to. Many times you don't even know you're triggered and you walk around angry or a low level of stress or high level of stress. With daily meditation, you become sensitive to thoughts and emotions, so you know pretty quickly what's going on. When you meditate, you slow down thoughts, you find space between the thoughts, makes you more aware of the thoughts, what we think about. We can go back and identify the thoughts that triggered the anxiety. Eventually, after you meditate, you can see the trigger coming before it gets to you, and you can make a choice not to get stressed. There's like a fork in the road. And right now, we usually go down the fork of stress and stories. You start meditating and you start going down that road and you say, oh, no, I'm going to come back. I'm going to go down this road of happy and joy. And then eventually what happens is, before you get to the fork, you see the fork and you go, I'm not going to get suckered into that choice, that path. I'm going to go down this path. So it gives you basic control over your mind. End of meditation commercial. Okay, so some of you may know this technique. It's called Tonglen. It's a Tibetan Buddhist practice developed by a Buddhist master named Atisha in the 11th century. And initially it was only taught to advanced practitioners, but Pema Chodron, very famous in the Buddhist community, Buddhist nun, has been teaching it now for probably, I'm guessing, 20 years or so, maybe not more, 30 years, and teaching it to people who are not advanced practitioners and getting a lot of positive reaction, positive results. And here's how it works. When you notice that you are triggered, you notice you are stressed, first thing you do is a slow inhale, and you imagine that you're inhaling that stressful feeling. So if it's anger, then you inhale that feeling of anger, and then a slow exhale. And while you're exhaling, imagine something pleasant for yourself. It could be a cup of hot chocolate, could be lying on the beach. It could be lying in bed, eating a great meal, being with a loved one. So that is the first part of the technique. There's several parts to it. So set number one is if you're angry about something, then you inhale the anger and you exhale someone massaging your neck. So we're going to do that for a couple of times. So think of something irritating or annoying. I'm sure that's not hard to do. And then slowly inhale that feeling that you feel. And then exhale something positive that you can visualize for yourself, lying on the beach, for example, whatever it is for you. One or two more times. Inhale that feeling. And exhale something positive for yourself. One more time. Inhale that irritating annoyance. And then exhale something positive for yourself. So we are used to not doing this. What are we used to doing? We're used to inhaling the positive energy, the white light. and exhaling the toxic energy that we think is inside of us. This is very, very different. This is actually just the opposite of that typical thing. And we'll talk about why it's the opposite and how this works differently. But for now, we're going to go on to set number 2. Set number 2, thank you for Elizabeth. I'm going to talk about that in a minute for that comment. Set number 2, we're going to do a slow inhale. We're going to imagine that inhaling that same stressful reaction that we have. But this time when we exhale, we're going to imagine something pleasant for someone you like or love, a loved one, a family member, a friend. So again, identify something annoying, irritating, angering, and inhale and observe that feeling of anger. And then exhale something pleasant for someone else. They get the cup of coffee or the hot chocolate. Again, inhale that irritating annoyance, anger. And then exhale something positive for a friend or family member one last time. Inhale that anger or annoyance. And exhale something nice and happy for someone else. Okay, that's set number 2. We do 3 sets. The first set's for yourself. The second set is for someone else. And the third set is, let's find the third set. Do the same inhale. And on the exhale, you can exhale something pleasant for the person that is triggering that in you. And we're not going to do that now, but because we don't have a lot of time, but so it's 3 sets. The first set, inhale something that you feel, that anger. The moment you start feeling triggered, you inhale that feeling and you exhale something really positive for yourself. The second, do that 2 or 3 times. The second set is for someone you like or love. And the third set, you inhale that feeling of anger, anxiety, or stress, and exhale something positive for the person that is the trigger behind that. And you kind of think of something that puts a smile on your face. So, for any feedback, I know we only did it for a total of 1 or 2 minutes, barely, but maybe there's some feedback out there. I'd love to hear, or questions or comments or complaints. I love complaints, by the way. So, would love to hear from anyone, either the chat box or turn your microphone on. What do you think about this technique? Amber, hi, you're on.
Hi. Yeah, I've actually didn't even realize I've actually been kind of doing this with myself um, a little bit every day, where like first thing in the morning, I do a check-in with myself. Like, did I sleep well? Like, where's my mood at? My first stressor this morning was at my husband, and I immediately like laid into him, and then I backed up and I was like, I'm just tired. I'm exhausted, like I didn't get much sleep last night. And so it brought me back, and I've been tending to like check in with myself throughout the day, and just checking in like really where I'm at, and like knowing like how I'm feeling, and knowing the person that I am and where my triggers are. I really do like the one where when people trigger you, a lot of mine comes from my family. They tend to really push those buttons for me, but I really like the third one where you give back, where you're like, grr, and then it turns out like, okay, but let me give them some generosity.
Mm-hmm.
I really took a lot out of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Yeah. So
yeah, I can sympathize and empathize with everything you said. So I totally get it. And I'm glad you're doing that, because that checking in, well, we check in because we either recognize that we're not really feeling positive.
Well, I think the whole idea of like meditation, people are like, oh, I'm never going to get there, like, because when you think of, if you've never done it before, people are like, oh, well, I can't do that, but I've been slowly working on that and just doing slight meditations for myself throughout the day. And it really has helped. It really has. And so I'm really glad I joined this today, because it's just validating even more
good.
what I've been.
Guess what?
So,
the best is yet to come.
Yay!
I've been holding back this whole time. So the best is it's coming up in another 5 or 10 minutes. Good, thank
Excellent.
you.
Well, thank you.
So why does this technique work? And it might be a little early for me to tell you that it works because you haven't done it enough. And if you do it a whole bunch of times, you start to recognize that it really does work. So for now, if it worked for you, great. If it didn't work for you, or you had no change whatsoever, that's okay. These are like little tiny drops of water in a bucket. You put a drop in the water bucket, you look in the bucket, you can barely even see it. But after you put 10, 20, 50, 200,000 drops in the water in the bucket, that bucket's overflowing. So that's how these techniques work. So why does this technique work? And for now, some of you may have to take it on faith, because this technique is about transformation and breaking that habitual reaction. You're focusing on your breath, so you're in the moment. That automatically puts the brakes on the feeling you have by coming right back to your breath. That's the moment. There's a body-mind connection again between the breathing and your state of mind. When we help others, which happens in set number 2, set number 1 is I inhale that feeling, that horrible feeling that I have or negative feeling, and then I exhale something positive for myself. Set 2, I'm exhaling something positive for someone else. Set 3, I'm exhaling something positive for someone that just pissed me off. When we help others, we feel better. And when we help ourselves, we feel better. So we're transforming this negative feeling into positive, and we're doing it pretty quickly in a short period of time. So it reduces the attachment to our anger or whatever we're feeling. It makes our mind more malleable, more flexible, so that we train ourselves to change our state of mind pretty quickly. The key word for this particular exercise is transformation. That's why we do the SNAP meditations, because we can change our state of mind in a moment. If I said to you, we're all going to meditate here for about a half an hour, I got plenty of time to talk to myself and tell myself stories and not observe my breath. But when I say, hey, we only have a minute or 2 minutes, we're right there. So that's why we do those SNAP meditations, so we can apply these techniques when we need them. So it's a wonderful technique to learn how flexible we are and how we can change our minds and our state of mind. Okay, next technique, skillful self-talk. So we're not trying to solve the problem here by talking to ourselves. This is about our state of mind. This is where you get to become your own therapist and save $200 an hour, or become someone else's therapist and charge $200 an hour. That's even better. So an example of skillful self-talk is you're stressed about the future. Your mind's going through all these worst case scenarios and spiraling downwards. So that's the kind of thing that you're now faced. And now what you're going to do is you're going to look at the bullet point, and say, hey, there's infinite possibilities of the future. How can you possibly predict the future? How can I predict the future? I was talking to my wife today about something that might happen a month from now. And it's like, we both looked at each other and says, we don't know what's going to happen a month from now. Everything that we've tried to predict so far about the future the last 10, 11 months has been wrong. So, or as Lama Lanang says, our teacher says, past is history, future is mystery. That's something you can just, say to yourself like a mantra. Another one that I like is not happening now, not happening now. And we kind of joke around about that at home whenever we kind of get into that mode of something that could go wrong, and we go, oh, not happening now. Not happening now. So you just don't know. So you can kind of memorize one or your favorite, and just when something pops into your mind or you're feeling bad about, or you say to yourself, gee, it's not happening now. Or, I can't predict the future. So it breaks it breaks the habit at the moment. That's what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to break the habit. And it brings the mind into play as well. It stops it from spiraling cyclically with our storytelling. Do it once. How much benefit do you get? Probably not much. Do it over and over and over again. It will have an impact, and it will quiet the mind, change that habit. It's kind of like, before the pandemic, I used to tell the story in the classes that I taught, and I'd say, I'm going to go, I want to get into a shape now. I plan on going to the gym once every few months. It's ridiculous. There's no value to that, or very little value. So same that drop of water in the bucket. One of my favorite slides. This is the worry bar chart. You can feel free to, if you want to copy the presentation, you can request it after we're done here, and you can print this out and keep it somewhere close by. The big tall bar are all the things we worry about, and the teeny tiny short one over there on the right are all the things we worry about that actually happen. So, so it's kind of a fun thing, but I promise you, when you have it, you're going to look at it and it's going to have meaning. Here's another one, feeling angry or stressed. Well, say to yourself, I feel angry. Just explicitly say it, kind of a little bit like what Amber was saying earlier, which is she checks in with herself, you know, and then you say, I feel it. This is what I'm feeling. Say it out loud. And then you give yourself reassurance as if you were talking to your 5-year-old self. I know how to handle this fear. I know eventually it's going to change. I know eventually it'll go away. I feel fear, but I'm sure over time this will dissipate. It's a way to be kind and compassionate to yourself. So it sounds simplistic, but if you can do it, it will be effective. Why? Tell me if this sounds familiar. It breaks the habit. It gives it a name and brings it to the surface. There's a recognition of what you are feeling to identify it, and can also help the realization that the feeling is ephemeral. It's going to come and go. We're not suppressing. We're not ignoring it. It's okay to feel fear. It is okay to reassure ourselves about how you feel. Ignoring doesn't work. Causes problems later when you do. The most important thing is it breaks the habit. Understand how to look at the future. Stressed about the future? Reviewing worst case scenarios? Well, what does impermanence mean? In the Buddhist philosophy or religion, we talk a lot about impermanence. So broaden your view. Impermanence means we all know to some degree what it means. Everything changes every moment. Nothing stays the same. It does not mean things will get worse. Impermanence does not mean things will get worse or fall apart. It means things will change. For better, for worse, who knows? You never know. In fact, when you focus on the worst case scenario, guess what? I remember when they teach you how to ski, snow skiing down the mountain, the instructor tells you, don't look at the trees. Why? Because where you look, you go. You look at the trees, you're more likely to hit a tree. If you focus on the negative, cyclical possibilities, that's where your mind goes. You're more likely to go in that direction. So let's broaden our view of the future possibilities. And the way to do this sometimes is you can go over thousands of possibilities that might happen. And what you focus on, you become. How many times has something seemingly bad happened and some good or amazing thing comes from it that you never would have imagined? So if you don't want to be surprised or triggered, best to contemplate impermanence, which is everything changes. So let's get comfortable with that. You can contemplate that and meditate, look around you all the time and see what is changing. So why does this work, this broadening of the view of the future? Breaks the cycle of incorrect thinking. We're interested in breaking this cycle. Incorrect thinking is when we allow our thoughts to trigger the stress event in our mind, body, and speech. That is incorrect thinking. Realization and understanding that stressing now is not appropriate given the thousands of possibilities out there. I can't possibly predict the future, but I can predict that things will change. Another phrase, it's not on the slide, this is temporary, this is temporary, this is temporary. It's true. Everything's temporary. Knowing and reminding, your state of mind is temporary also. Knowing and reminding yourself of this is very helpful because it's true. You're not stuck in any one situation. Attachment is based on things going a certain way. Impermanence reminds us that things change. So, hardwired versus neuroplasticity. When tired of repeating your reactions, remember they are habitual, they're pre-programmed, they're hardwired for now. This is not a conscious or random event that you're feeling. It's how we have trained ourselves. And if you can train yourself one way, you can also train yourself to reprogram as well. This lets you know what is going on and have the ability to identify it and do something about it. Neuroplasticity, our brains have the ability to learn new processes. Their neural networks are not hardwired. You can teach an old dog new tricks. So here's another one. When triggered, ask yourself, will you be thinking about this 3 to 6 months from now? You're angry, you're irritated, something, and then you say, well, 3 to 6 months from now, is this going to make any bit of a difference? No. So in most cases, it won't. Another one, you get triggered, anxious, angry, irritated, annoyed, stressed, whatever it is. Be grateful. Be grateful. Why is that there? Be grateful that what you're experiencing is an opportunity to learn and change your habitual reaction. In Buddhism, we call it a teaching. So if that didn't happen, how would you learn how to handle it and change? So be grateful for it. You have the opportunity to learn how to break the habit. Reduce the reaction that you have, lose the attachment. This makes you realize that this is part of life and can be viewed in a positive way. Even death can be very sad, but if it's a good death or you believe in a higher power, then you can have a beautiful response all at the same time. Death is part of life from the moment we're born. How much will this make you feel better? Initially, not very much, but over time, it will. Whatever situation you're dealing with, if you train yourself to be grateful for the opportunity to learn more about yourself, it's a great way to practice patience, equanimity, self-love, self-compassion. Amber has another one she just typed in, this shall pass, or this too shall pass, which is absolutely true. Okay. The conflict is in your mind. Those of us that know Lama Lanang, he says that quite a bit. And it's a good mantra to have in many, many cases when the issue is truly something that is all in your mind. You're annoyed or irritated about someone. Well, that's you. That irritation, that annoyance, is that you? Who said you had to be irritated or annoyed? Your habitual reaction did. No one forced that on you. So she said that. He did that to me. Yeah, that's true. But it's up to you to decide how you want to feel. So many interpersonal relational issues can be addressed with the conflict. I read the news and the politics and I got all pissed off about something. Well, guess what? Conflict is in your mind. One of my favorite stories is a famous monk, Mingyur Rinpoche, famous Lama from a family of famous Lamas, tells a story about one of his brothers who was a monk in a monastery. Actually, you know what? I'll save the story for another time because I see that we're running late. Okay, here's a different story that which is another famous monk, Tsokmi Rinpoche. He was with a group of his students, and they were in China, and he was crossing a bridge. And the bridge was had a glass bottom to it, so you can kind of see down thousands of feet. And hundreds of people, maybe thousands, are walking across the bridge, back and forth, back and forth. And he puts his foot onto the bridge, and he is immediately struck with anxiety and panic, fear of heights. And he finds himself down, literally on his knees, crawling in incredible fear and anxiety. He was in panic mode. And little by little, he was able to do it, but he found the experience to be an amazing teaching. He was grateful, which of course now benefits us, which is that what he was experiencing was real panic, real anxiety. But the reality of it was not true. The bridge was safe. Thousands of people crossed it every moment. That's where that phrase from the beginning of class comes, real, but not true. What this means is that while thoughts are really happening, and there's a real biochemistry that accompanies them, they're only representations in our mind. They are not the experience of this living moment. Our thoughts are not necessarily a reflection of reality. Our thoughts are not necessarily a reflection of reality. Okay, I saved the best for last. It's my favorite. So there's a famous Zen master. She passed away 2011. Her name is Joko Beck, Charlotte Joko Beck, right here in San Diego. I don't know where all you folks are from, but she lived and taught here in San Diego. And you're going to need a pen and paper to play this game. And I call this game the requirements game. And part of the requirements game, so pen and paper would be great. If you want to be high tech and use your iPad and your computer, fine, go ahead. I've preferred pen and paper, but whatever works for you guys is okay with me. You're going to create 3 lists. And this is the start of the game. You'll finish the game over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, but we're going to get it started. And so you're going to add to those lists over time. And the very first, and these lists are going to be invaluable to your life. And if they're not, then we have a full refund policy on this class. You get 100% refund if these lists are not, that's a joke. Okay, so the first list is requirements as a child. Write down everything that you were trained to be when you were a small child. You might have been trained by your parents, your culture, your school, your teachers, your friends, everything you were trained to be. So a quote from Joko Beck, you can start writing, a young child is just looking, trying to make sense out of life. So naturally, the people he or she looks to are big people that take care of them. The child's listening, not just to how they tell him or her to be, but they're watching, absorbing, learning. So a few from my list. What was I trained to be? What was I required to be in my mind? A good boy. Be quiet. These could be yours, but you're going to make your own list. I'm just sharing it just to kind of get you rolling. Be financially successful. Be neat. Have good grades. Behave. When you grow older, make sure you're a businessman, lawyer, profession. And so I could keep reading here, but I really don't. I'd rather that. I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds just to write down for you, because I don't want to put things on your page. What were you trained or required to be as a child growing up? So I'll give you another 10, 20 seconds, and this is a work in progress. And if anyone wants to share 1 or 2 of their requirements on the chat screen, that would be very helpful. What was expected of you or required of you growing up? Don't all type at once. So my list started with 5 or 6 items over on it. And after about 2 to 3 weeks, I did this exercise years ago, but I still refer to it. After about 2 to 3 weeks, I had 25 items on it. So requirements that I picked up from when I was growing up. Okay, thank you, Amber. Yeah, behave. That was a big one, right? Behavior. You had the same parents I had. Behave yourself. Teachers, parents, behave. Behave. Okay, good. What other requirements did you have growing up? Anyone else? Like I said, I've got 25 on my list, so we know that you guys are going to have 25 at least too. And I was not a good boy growing up, so maybe I have a lot more than you do. Work hard. Good handwriting. Absolutely. Yep. Okay. You're getting the point. Be successful. Yep. That's right. Okay. So you got the point here. The list is going to grow. Obey. Ooh, I know that one. The list is going to grow as you recall more and more. So please add to this list as you go. That's list number 1. Okay, we're going to go to list number 2. Different list. Second list are requirements as an adult. As an adult, what do you require or expect of yourself? Some of the things on this list will be different. Some might be the same, no problem. Now you're putting your adult hat on and you're saying, well, what do I require or expect of myself as an adult? Okay, I'm going to read some from my list. I require that I'm disciplined, organized. I require of myself not to be fearful. I require myself to do my work before I play. I require myself to be kind. Okay, I'm going to stop my list now because I don't want to put on your pages my list, but what do you require of yourself as an adult? Very important list. Even if you're not interested in playing this game, I beg of you just to write down 5 things as a child list, 5 as an adult list. This is the cream of the crop here, this particular exercise. Anyone want to share anything with me from your adult list of what you required from yourself? Yep. Thank you, Laura. Being a good wife. I like the quotes, by the way. Be strong. Okay, these are great. This is exactly what we want. Stay healthy, to be happy. I like that requirement because, as you'll find out, these requirements that we set for ourselves are a very high bar. So thank you. Okay, so I'm going to let you keep writing, and I'm just going to read more from my list. Okay, not all of them. I was required to compete. I was required to do well in school. I was required to fit in, to be on time. Don't be too adventuresome. Be like your brother. Be like your sister. Be smart. Don't spend. Be a saver. My list goes on and on and on as a child. Here's a few from my adult list. Be financially successful. Be respectful. Be fair. Always defend the underdog. Clean, organized, knowledgeable, polite. I got a long list of requirements here. Okay? Be a good Buddhist. That's one of my requirements. Might be for you, might be a good Christian, etc., etc. So keep adding to the list. Okay, now what you might notice as you develop these lists is something on list 1 might be the exact opposite of list 2. Okay, well, how's that work? How are you going to be able to meet both requirements if something on your list 1 is the exact opposite of what's on your list 2? Okay, let's think about that. You can't. So you've set yourself a bar that you cannot meet. It is impossible to meet. Okay, what happens when an important requirement on either of your lists are not met? I'm opening this back up to you guys. What happens if something happens in your life where that requirement is not met? So Elizabeth says, be strong. What happens when you're not strong? How do you feel? Be a good wife. What happens if you're not a good wife? Be comfortable. Overall, be happy. That's a requirement. Well, what happens when an important requirement on one of your lists is not met? How do you feel? Please share. Self-doubt. Okay, I'm going to call that a negative state of mind, just like stress. You're not good enough, also negative. So okay, great. Guilty, great. So now all of a sudden, some requirement on one of your lists is not met. How do you feel? I'm going to use a broad term here, stress. So examples, and it can not just you creating this, but it could be someone does this to you. Requirement might be, I'm going to be on time, but then your wife makes you late. So you're late somewhere. Well, what about my requirement? Always be on time, always be on time. Some people get really angry when they're not on time because she made me late. Here's a requirement. Don't be a quitter. Be financially successful. But then the pandemic kicks in and you lose your job. or your whole company goes, well, I had a requirement that is now being violated. Someone's not fair to you, or you're not fair to someone else, and you have this requirement of being fair. What do you feel? Stress, anger, anxiety, guilt, disappointment, sad, self-doubt, you name it. So list 1 and list 2, they represent your identity, how you view yourself, what you expect of yourself. And the more important the requirement is to you, the more grasping on your part to maintain your identity. So if it's really important for you to be a good wife, or to be fair, or to be successful, then we're going to really hold on to that requirement, do our best to meet that requirement. And when it is not met, that's when we get angry and stressed. The best example that I can think of, frankly, and I've thought about this quite a bit, is our former president, Donald Trump. What was on his list of requirements since he was a child? Win, be strong, never give in, be macho. I always need to get what I want. In a very big way. Talk about grasping and attachment. That was on his list. That's on Donald Trump's list, right? Say it again. Win, be strong, never give in, be macho, always get what you want. Long list. And we can tell how much grasping there is by the degree of his anger or his state of mind if something violated his list. So if I think I'm a good father, be a good husband. But then I get into an argument with my son or my wife, and they go, you're not a good father. You're not. What am I going to do? I'm going to defend that because I'm really attached to that view of myself. The bigger the attachment, the bigger the stress and anxiety level. So back to our list, guess what? You may not even be consistent. We have these standards and requirements of ourselves that are not consistent. So, this concept of being on time. Well, what does on time mean? Being successful, being a good wife, what does that mean? How are you going to define that in any given moment? How can you be consistent with that? It is impossible. These requirements, these stories we set up for ourselves are impossible to meet. We are setting ourselves up for failure with these requirements. The third list, which you can create, is how you feel when you experience where an important requirement on the list is not met. So when my company was closed down from the pandemic and my list was be financially successful, blah, 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 how did I feel? I felt miserable. I applied my techniques, pulled out of it pretty quickly, and then went about my business. But that's when I knew that requirement was really strong, because the moment it gets taken away, if it's not a strong requirement, then when it's violated, probably doesn't impact you much. Being a good Christian might be a very important requirement. Being neat may not be a requirement or an important one. So an example, my colleague is rude to me. Someone's not fair to me in a business transaction. Someone close to me is irresponsible, or I am not patient. Someone treats me unfairly. My wealth is threatened. My success is threatened. So what happens? Someone calls me a quitter. Anxious, angry, fearful, irritated, annoyed, worry. So your job is to build these lists over the next few days and weeks. And you're going to start to see that growing up, we have put ourselves in an impossible situation. And we support those requirements with these stories that we tell ourselves in our mind. What's the impossible situation? To be consistent between the lists, because growing up, I was told to do this, but as an adult, I'm telling myself to do this. To be consistent from one day to the next with the same requirement, with these requirements is we're setting ourselves up for failure. And we reinforce it every time we tell ourselves these stories to reinforce these requirements about who and how we should be. The less attached we are to our requirements or our self-identity, the less we will feel stress or anxiety. We're breaking the habit of allowing ourselves to be triggered. The less attached we are to our requirements or our self-identity, that means the fewer stories, the less we're going to feel stress or anxiety. And we are now breaking the habit of allowing ourselves to be triggered. So understanding this together with the meditation practice and these tools, they help reduce the stories and all the requirements. So the next step on this game is when you get triggered, first thing you're going to do is that very first technique that we practiced, where we're going to inhale and exhale into that area where we feel the stress. We're going to break that habitual reaction. We're going to connect the mind-body, the breathing and the mind and the body, and reduce our stress by just observing. That was that very first technique we did. And then the second directions here are identify the requirement on the list that was not met. Key. Next time you're feeling angry, pissed off, whatever, jealous, anxious, stress, you now know what to do with that first technique. Observe your breathing in the abdomen or your chest, whatever it is, for 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then go to your list in your mind or on your paper and say, what requirement got violated here? Oh, well, it was the way she talked to me. Oh, she didn't treat me fairly. Oh, that was my list number 7. I lost my job. Well, that was be financially successful. Someone did this to me or said that to me. I was accused of not being a good wife. Okay, that was on. So that's the connection. We are making that connection between our identity and the strength of it or weakness of it. We are trying to break our habitual reaction of getting triggered. So we go to the first technique we practiced, breathing in and out of the area where you feel physical stress. When you feel the tension in your body or mind, remember, just go to that area and just breathe in and out of it. That's all. You're not thinking about fixing anything. You're not thinking about the trigger. You're not trying to solve a problem. You're just observing the breath. 2, 3, 4, 5 breaths. That's it. Step 2, in your mind, identify what was on your list that got violated by you or by someone else. Doesn't matter. What requirement was not met? Either list. Who violated it? Someone else or you? Doesn't matter. What do you learn when you do this? That as a result of your upbringing, your culture, your family, your genetics, we've created in some cases strong requirements of ourselves and our lives. It is impossible to meet the requirements you've created for yourself as a child or an adult. It is impossible. I lost my job. Can't be successful or financially successful. Well, it's a pandemic. It's impossible. My health changed. Well, the requirement of be strong might have been violated, or be healthy. Someone was rude to me. Well, rudeness is wrong. That's one of my requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So please develop your list in the next few days. Look back at what you learned to be as a child, what was expected or required of you as an adult. Add to that list. See how consistent you are. See what changes, even day to day, what you require of yourself. How can you possibly define what it means to be a good husband? You know? So step 1, you're breaking the thought process that creates that physical and mental stress in the body and mind. Step 2, check the requirement that is being trampled on by you or someone else. Pretty quickly, you realize it's impossible not to have the requirements on your list violated. Little by little, you start to see what triggers you have, understand that self-identity, the stories, the requirements are impossible to be perfect all the time. So we're holding ourselves to a pretty big, high standard here. So be on time. Well, then your car gets stuck in traffic. You're stuck in traffic, you get anxious. Why? You know, if anyone's ever been in a car, which I have with Lama Lanang, you can be stuck in traffic. He is not a problem, no problem in the world. Be strong, we'll get what people get sick. Be financially successful, pandemics happen. Be self-sufficient, independent, pandemics happen. So requirements are conflicting, impossible for you or others to always meet the requirement. We're holding ourselves to an impossibly high standard. List 1 and 2 make up your self-identity. The stronger the attachment, the greater the impact of list 3. So this is a quote from Joko Beck. When you are in that moment, breathing in and out, observing a stressed area, there's nothing to worry about. So in some odd way, it's the only place you ever are at peace, when you're breathing in and out of that stressed area. You know, people are always looking for the place where there will be peace. And it's, of course, always right under your nose. We tend to get these crises so we can learn. If you didn't get the crisis, you wouldn't learn. They show up right on schedule. So, big recap. Talked about our triggers, our habits, what worked growing up, that habit unlikely to work now. Make these techniques again, start small, apply the techniques when or before the habitual response kicks in. Over time, the habitual response weakens. What is the goal? What is the goal here? Well, it's not about winning or succeeding or fixing the problem or making more money or winning the argument. That is not the goal. It is about paying attention and staying with it and coming into the present moment, usually with your breath. It's about practicing these antidotes over and over again, first with the small stuff, and you don't even have to be that good at it. You just have to do it and be consistent at it. It's not easy. You have to be brave, but you're already brave simply by showing up today. And I should tell you that you're all going to get a grade in today's class. Here's how it works. And eventually you're going to grade yourself in the next few days. So you get an A for just showing up. So you all got an A. Isn't that great? But you can grade yourself because as follows. If you meditate every day, you get an A. If you meditate, if you do any of these techniques, you get an A. You don't have to do it well. If you don't meditate or you don't use these techniques, you don't get a grade. But simply by doing it, you get an A in the class. And if you do it twice, you get an A plus. So it's simply related by doing it, being consistent, practicing over and over again, and little by little, that bucket will fill with lots of water, a lot less stress, less anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to open it up for a Q&A in 30 seconds, but I wanted to thank Lama Lanang for motivating and inspiring me and allowing me to teach this class. And I hope you all benefit. But I'm happy, I'm not in a rush, so I'm happy to answer any and all questions, comments, complaints. Those are usually my favorite. So feel free to speak or chat or whatever you'd like.
Hi, this is Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I just want to say thank you. It was so amazing, awesome, and beautiful. You're talking, and it's really, really inspiring and really helpful for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Laura. I'll tell you what will make me really happy. I don't know if I'll ever see any of you ever again. Some of you I know I will, but if you actually do it. So I'm glad I know I can give good information, and I'm thrilled. Thank you very much. I appreciate that compliment, but I'm going to be really happy. I'll feel it if you actually try some of these things and create a habit for yourself. And there's a lot of information here, and feel free to email us if you want to get a copy of this. And you might only pick 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 and just do it over and over and over again. And that would make me even happier, is if you actually can implement these
Uh,
things.
Actually, I think it would be a very great idea if we tell you how we're doing it. I mean, maybe let you know that we are doing it.
Okay, yeah, that if you have a good story, I love good stories. Hey, this is what happened to me today, and da 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 da, and then I did this, and then something changed. And good stories can mean small, little, tiny changes. That's all we're looking for here. We're not looking to become a Buddha or a Tara or, you know, Bodhisattva or tomorrow. If it happened, that'd be great. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for small, tiny changes. On occasion, you will get a big change. But I promise you, based on my experience of a long time doing this, it takes a long time, but it absolutely, absolutely will change. It's kind of like water on the mountain where there's, you know, this big rocky mountain. And guess what? Over thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, the water is stronger than the mountain. It wears it away. That's exactly what happens here. So yeah, and feel free to email. Absolutely, I'd love to hear. Or even if you have a question, I'm really upset about something, it hasn't worked out for me, blah, 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 I don't remember, I'm upset, you know, even if something negative transpires, feel free to reach out.
Can you share us your email, but
Yes.
here in the chat? Or
sure, absolutely. Well, if you go to my website, I think my email's there, mortylevine.com.
Okay.
Probably easier.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm open to the good and the bad. So whatever you want to share is great. Thank you for saying that, Laura. Great. Anyone else? And thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate your chat comment. Any other thoughts or comments or questions or?
Marty,
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, great. I really appreciate your clarity and just the way you set it all up. It's just wonderful to follow, and especially the Tonglen is. I've always done Tonglen, and it's been my savior so many times when I've experienced fear. And when I've told anybody about it, it's always hard to explain it. But the way you broke it down, like into ways that people could actually work with it, I think it's wonderful. The last exercise with the requirements as a child and an adult, I've never done it like that, and when the requirement is broken, so that'll be really interesting to explore that. I also wanted to share one other method, but just because it's similar to what you're doing. But
Jill, you went on mute, so can you? We don't hear you. Don't hear Jill anymore. Does anyone else hear Jill? No. Jill, I think you turned your microphone off by accident. Okay, while we're waiting for Jill to come back, let me see. Oh, there's another. Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for reminding me, Amber. Yes, so Jigmalingpa Center is a nonprofit organization. So if you are inspired, then absolutely, we do accept donations. Our goal of the organization of Jigmalingpa Center is just to do this, what we're doing here, is just to share information with Buddhists, non-Buddhists, we don't care. Teachings and things that will just help reduce suffering. And you can make a donation by going to our website and just clicking on the support button. And the website is BuddhistSanDiego.com, BuddhistSanDiego.com. Or you could just look for type into Google Jigmalingpa Center San Diego and we'll come up. Thank you very much. Any amount is appreciated. Does not go to me, it goes to the organization. Thank you for reminding me of that, Amber. Good. Any other thoughts or questions or comments? Excellent. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for supporting me and helping kick this off. I appreciate that. Good. And just out of curiosity, has anyone been to, this is my second time teaching this class. This is a little bit different than the first time I taught it. Was anyone here on the first time around, or is this, okay, so good. All right, all new people. Hi, Dylan. Good to see you again. Glad you're here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so thank you so much again. And if you want a copy of this slideshow, then just email us and we'll send you a copy or a link to a copy. If you want to contact me directly, you can. The best way is you just go to my website, mortylevine.com, or just to however you connected with us, either through Facebook or Jigma Lingpa Center, however you connected, and that information will get to me. Okay, thank you so much. I hope everyone stays safe. Tough times out there, but now you've got the tools. So have a wonderful evening, everyone. Appreciate
Thank you.
it. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank